Welcome to the Intuitive Woman Podcast with your host, Tina Conroy. Gain clarity, confidence, and trust in your inner wisdom. Explore spiritual topics, including intuition, healing, wellness, yoga, vibrant living, and more.
Hey guys, welcome to the Intuitive Woman Podcast. I am so grateful to be here with all of you, bringing you another wonderful episode in the series, Spirituality, Intuition, and Business. But before we go there, I would love to center like we do every week on the show. So if you can, go ahead and close your eyes. Take a nice, long, slow, deep breath in and exhale away. Now on that exhale, allow something to be released. Perhaps it's physical, emotional, or something else. Take a moment to ground our energies, connect to our innermost wisdom, spirituality, intuition, clarity, and I bless each and every one on the show. Take another deep breath in and exhale away. And then slowly come on back to the show. Come back to the body and take another breath. It always feels so good to ground our energies and to connect. I'm always so grateful for all of us to connect together. So I want to share with you two things coming in the local area. On Sunday, April 23rd, I will be speaking at the Parents Resource Center Moms Retreat, and it will be held at Manhasset Bay Yacht Club from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is an event with moms and to allow moms to be really taken care of at this wonderful event. I am speaking The Power of Female Intuition, and you can get your tickets at prcmomsretreat.bpt.me. And then one more event on May 13th from 11:30 to 5:30, I'm holding a Reiki Level 1 certification class. And if you're interested in that, you can contact me at tinaconroy111@gmail.com. And that is in Roslyn, New York. And always want to share what's happening in the Facebook group. We are building a wonderful community at the Intuitive Women group on Facebook. So just go ahead and find the group. It is searchable and I would gladly invite you in. Every Friday is live at 5 and I pull cards and we have a fantastic time. So I hope I see you there. Samantha Calonita is a certified life coach and Reiki practitioner. She is a lifelong perfectionist who has been on a journey to redefine success for the modern professional woman and allow more ease and adventure into her life. Now Samantha is helping other women do the same through her life coaching practice. Samantha specializes in working with clients who are ready to build their confidence, stop patterns of procrastination, ditch their fear of failure, use their voices, quiet racing thoughts, regain control of their lives. Samantha was born and raised in New York, but now lives and works in Savannah, Georgia, a city filled with mystery and magic. She earned her bachelor's degree at George Washington University and attended Columbia University for a master's in sociology and education. She has also explored many forms of energy work that have influenced her personal practices and coaching style. You can learn more about Samantha at SamanthaCalonita.com, and that's CALONITA. Hey, Samantha, how are you?
Good. How are you, Tina?
I'm awesome. I'm so glad we get to connect today.
Me too. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you are a very busy girl. I think we've met a little bit over a year ago. We were just figuring out about 14, 15 months ago. And I am so excited to see you out there and doing your thing and just blossoming. And I really wanted to have you on the show to share with the listeners your journey and where you were and where you are now and all the wonderful things that are coming. So let's take them back. Let's take the listeners back. I always like to take the listeners back. As we talk about spirituality and intuition, how would you say growing up, were you spiritual being brought up or were you more religious? And maybe you can share that.
I would definitely say I would tend towards the religious as a child. I grew up in a household where my dad was Jewish and my mom was Catholic, but my sisters and I were all raised Catholic. So we went to public schools, but we went to, Sunday school on the weekends and went to church. But I have to say, I didn't feel particularly close to God, even though I was doing those things. I think I found spirituality later in life, in my 20s. And today, I don't go to church, but I feel closer to God, to spirit than ever.
Now, is your family still religious?
Yes, I didn't have a Catholic wedding ceremony, and I know that didn't sit wonderfully with my Catholic grandma. And I'm sure my mom wished there were a few more prayers at that service a few years ago. But I think they accept me for the most part for who I am and for what they understand of my journey.
It's always that thing where we want to, I'll talk about myself. I'm always a pleaser and I'm getting better and standing on my own and all of that. But being the oldest of four, I was always trying to, we're going to get into the perfectionism because we have that in common. It's crazy, but pleasing and wanting everybody to be happy or smoothing the waves. And so always to my detriment, having the certain wedding or having the particular ritual that it's always been very interesting. So we have that in common in the sense of the perfectionist and not wanting to let people down. Bring us a little bit forward in your journey of what kind of woke you up in a spiritual sense and allowed you to connect to yourself and be more of the person who you feel connected to and who you are today.
So I like to say that my spiritual journey started with a bang, but in reality, it started with a panic attack on my wedding day. And it just shocked me into awareness. I was scared at the time. I didn't really understand what was happening in my body and in my mind. And it was the thing that woke me up. And I realized there must be a better way to deal with stress than what I'm doing. Because with the amount of pressure I put on myself, I wanted everyone to think I was perfect. I had it all together. I had this shiny veneer, this little polish on the outside that it looked like everything was perfect on the outside. But on the inside, things were swirling. I was nervous. I was insecure. And I didn't want anyone to see that. And I just couldn't hold it in anymore. And so it was actually that panic attack that inspired me to look into spirituality, to look into energy work, to look into Reiki, which is how we connected, and to find new ways to connect to myself and let that person on the inside kind of heal and come out so that I could be more aligned with who I really was.
They always say there can be these wake-up calls or God kind of taps us on the shoulder and then we're not listening, we get the big wake-up call. At that time, when you were even prior to feeling that on your wedding day, must have been so, just so difficult. But up to that, was it the career? Was it the place you live? Like, if you could look at, was it just a bunch of things?
I am a perfectionist. That, as you mentioned, that's something we have in common. And along with perfectionism comes a lot of people pleasing, comes a lot of beating yourself up on the inside and never feeling like you stack up. And what I found was that what I was doing all those years was I was trying to look external to myself, look to my parents, my bosses, my partner to validate my worth. I was trying to seek my self-worth from other people. And so I was pushing myself to, go to that Ivy League school and get that great degree and not just get the good job with a solid salary, but get promoted and then get promoted again. And when there's nowhere else to get promoted, what do you do? And I realized there was this void that no promotion, no pat on the back from my boss, no amount of money could fill. And that's where, spirituality really came into my life because that was the piece that was missing.
You have the panic attack and it wakes you up and it shakes you to your core. There's that moment, but then there's also the action. So tell us, there's probably so many women and men, but I do have a lot of listeners that are women that really need to hear this because what happens is they may have had the wake up call and they know that instinctual intuition, gut feeling to do something, but then they don't take the action and you did. So talk us through a little bit of the process.
So once we got home from the honeymoon, I have to say honeymoon helped. Being on a beach and being out in nature is certainly great for dealing with anxiety. I got help. I couldn't do it alone. Maybe I could have, but I didn't want to. I had been doing it alone for years, relying only on myself, thinking I had to do it all by myself. And I didn't anymore. So I reached out for help. I reached out to my sister, and she connected me with a body worker, an energy worker, a friend of hers. And I started getting body work done. Then he introduced me to a breath worker. So I started doing a type of breath work that's called rebirthing breath work. And then I was introduced to a flower essence practitioner, and I started working with flower essences to help me really gently release some of that anxiety in my body. I started writing. So that was a personal practice I did for myself, and anybody can do that. And it really supported me in getting some of those racing thoughts out of my head. They no longer had to pong around my brain. They were on the page. And sometimes I would write down those thoughts and then I would burn those thoughts. I would, go outside into a safe space and just burn those pieces of paper. And energetically and symbolically, that was just huge for me to be able to let go of those things. So those were some of the things I did to support myself. And I started to get into how could I help myself more? So I took my Reiki courses with you. And the beautiful thing about that is the self-care practices afterwards. That
Right.
For 21 days, I was giving myself Reiki. I was practicing for myself and taking care of myself. And the more I took care of myself, the more I started to learn I could pay this forward. And one day I could actually help other people to do the same thing.
And then you had to move, because I know when we met, and we're going back again about 12, 14 months, you had a big trip planned. I know you went to India. We have that in common as well. We love that. You also were thinking about moving, but I don't think at the time you knew exactly, you knew you were going to move. I believe that, but I don't think you knew exactly where. So tell us about that, because there's so many people that probably, again, have the wake-up call, want to do something. I mean, let's face it, New York is a very, very high, intense, stressful area, especially where we were living or where we live. Tell us about how that came to be. How did you decide to just pick up and move away?
That was definitely a leap of faith I took. My husband and I always loved Savannah. We got married there in 2013, and we had actually found it on a road trip randomly in 2010. So it always kind of popped into our lives. But it was another move I made for my health, for my mental and spiritual health. I knew, even though I loved New York and still love New York for everything it is, the energy, the stress, the people, even the vibe and the expectation that you are your career and you always have to be hustling for the next thing. I didn't need any more of that in my life. That was not serving me. I needed to slow down. And where better to go to slow down than the South?
It sounds so nice. I have never been to Savannah, and it's one of the places that my husband and I talk about a lot. He travels a lot, but he hasn't been to Savannah, which is interesting. I hear it's really beautiful and magical, like you mentioned.
It really is. The first time, even just flying in, if you are on a plane and you touch down and you start to see a mix of palm trees and then these big, majestic old oaks with Spanish moss hanging down. The first thing I said when we arrived here was, what is this magic place? How did we find it? And I knew we were meant to be here. There was a time when I was connecting more to my spiritual side. I was listening to my intuition telling me it was time to leave New York. It was time to leave that really stressful environment and have an adventure. I really love adventure and I value that. And I didn't have much of it in my life. So my husband and I quit our jobs on April 1st of last year. And then I hopped a plane with my big sister and we went to India for 2 weeks and hiked in the Himalayas and stayed at ashrams and bathed in the Ganges. And it was magical and intimidating all at the same time. And then I got in my car with Michael, my husband, and we road tripped to Savannah without a place to stay. And we never looked back.
Wow. First of all, I can share the India part because everyone will ask, and I'm sure you get this a lot, how is India? And I always hesitate and I say, it's an experience.
Yeah.
don't go there for a vacation per se, but it's an experience and it's a risk also. Not believe